The wind screamed across the red desert as if the land itself warned him to turn back. Dust rose in swirling ghosts around the lone rider. A man in a torn leather coat, his hat low, his eyes steady as stone. The locals said no one who rode into the Apache Valley came back the same. Some never came back at all. But the cowboy wasn't here to chase stories. He was here to buy land, a stretch of forgotten earth whispered to belong to a woman taller than any man, stronger than any storm, and wilder than the mountain lions that prowled her borders. They called her Ayasha, the giant Apache woman. Some said she was a curse born of the desert wind. Others swore she was a protector, a spirit bound to keep trespassers away. The cowboy didn't believe in curses or spirits. He believed in what he could touch, what he could shoot, and what he could tame. Yet as he crossed the last ridge and saw her home, a lonely wooden cabin, crouched beside a river that glittered like molten silver beneath the sun, he felt something inside him stir, something older than fear and deeper than pride. She was there, standing beside a horse that looked like a toy, beside her towering frame. Her hair, black as midnight, flowed past her shoulders. Her eyes, sharp and amber like a hawk's, watched him without moving. Every step he took toward her made the earth feel smaller, and when he stopped before her, he realized she wasn't just tall. She was monumental, a being carved by the land itself, her skin bronzed by the sun, her presence so fierce it made the horizon seem to bow. "I came to talk about your land," he said, voice steady though his heart beat like a hammer. "They say it's for sale." Her lips curved, not into a smile but something like amusement. "Men have come here before," she said, her voice deep and rich like thunder rolling over the hills. "They came with gold, with weapons, with promises. They all left broken." "Maybe they weren't strong enough," he said, adjusting the brim of his hat. Her eyes glinted. "No man is strong enough for me." The air went still. A hawk cried somewhere high above, and the cowboy felt the words settle in his chest like a challenge he hadn't known he'd been waiting for. He dismounted, boots crunching on dry earth, and met her gaze without flinching. "Guess we'll see about that." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then she turned and walked toward the cabin. "If you think you can handle this land," she said over her shoulder, "you'll have to prove it." The cabin's doorway was twice the size of a normal one, carved from logs thicker than a man's chest. Inside, everything bore her touch, tools built for her hands, furniture that dwarfed ordinary folk. Yet it wasn't crude. There was artistry in every beam, every carving, every pattern burned into the wood. She had built this place, he realized, not as a home, but as a fortress of solitude. She gave him a jug of water, then stepped outside again. "The land doesn't like strangers," she said. "You'll see before sunset." The cowboy drank, then followed her. The day stretched hot and merciless. They crossed fields where the soil was cracked and dry, yet from between the fissures, tiny flowers bloomed, desert survivors, stubborn as life itself. She moved with the grace of someone who belonged here, her stride effortless despite her size. He noticed scars on her arms, pale lines like lightning bolts, signs of battles fought long ago. When they reached the river, she knelt, still towering over him even then, and pressed her palm to the water. "This river keeps the valley alive," she said. "It remembers who protects it." "That's a pretty way to say it's yours," he replied. She looked at him, the faintest smile flickering at the corner of her mouth. "It was mine before your kind came with fences and papers." He didn't argue. The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of rain, though the sky was clear. Then a sound echoed through the valley, low, guttural, like the growl of something vast. Her expression changed instantly. "Move," she said sharply, and before he could ask, she shoved him aside with one hand as the ground exploded near them. From the ridge above, a massive boulder had come loose, tumbling down toward the riverbank. He barely rolled away in time, dust choking his lungs, the world spinning in chaos. When it stopped, he looked up to see her standing there, hands braced against the stone, her muscles straining, face fierce with effort. She had stopped the boulder from crushing him. The sight froze him, the impossible made real. She shoved the rock aside with a roar, sending it rolling harmlessly into the river. "I told you," she said, her breath ragged but her eyes steady. "This land doesn't like strangers." He rose slowly, brushing dust from his coat. "Then it's got something in common with its owner." Her gaze softened just slightly. "You're still here. Guess I'm not smart enough to run." For the first time she laughed, a sound that rolled like summer thunder. "Maybe not," she said, "but you might be brave enough to stay." The sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the sky in fire. The cowboy looked at her, the giant woman who had just defied the mountain itself, and something unspoken passed between them, a spark born not of fear or challenge, but of recognition. Two souls carved from the same relentless wilderness, daring the world to break them, and though neither said a word, they both knew the night ahead would test whether courage was truly stronger than the land, or the heart that guarded it. The night came heavy and alive, carrying whispers through the canyon like the ghosts of warriors long gone. The cowboy sat by the fire outside the giant woman's cabin, the flames painting restless shadows across the ground. His horse grazed nearby, uneasy, its ears twitching at sounds the man couldn't hear. Above, the stars burned fierce and cold, unblinking witnesses to the strange alliance forming between a mortal man and a woman who seemed born of myth. Iyasha emerged from the darkness, carrying the carcass of a deer slung over one shoulder, as effortlessly as if it were a rabbit. She dropped it beside the fire with a thud that made the earth tremble slightly. "You eat?" she asked, her tone halfway between command and question. "I do," he said, tipping his hat back. "But I usually prefer not to eat something that could stare back at me 5 minutes ago." Her eyes flashed with amusement as she drew a blade longer than his forearm and began to carve the meat. "The land gives, you take. That's the way it's always been. City men forget." "I ain't from the city," he said quietly. "I can tell," she replied without looking up. "You wear your pride like armor. But armor breaks. The land doesn't." He watched her work, the precision of her hands, the ritualistic care in how she salted and skewered the meat. There was something sacred in the way she moved, like each motion honored an ancient rhythm. When the firelight danced against her face, the scars on her arms seemed to shimmer like old runes. They ate in silence, broken only by the crackle of flames and the faraway cry of a coyote. Finally he spoke. "You saved my life today. I owe you for that." She looked at him, expression unreadable. "You owe the land. It spared you because I asked it to. You talk about this land like it's alive." "It is," she said simply. "You just don't listen hard enough." Something in her voice made him quiet. He'd spent his life chasing empty horizons, gold, cattle, revenge, even love, but nothing had ever made him feel small and awake the way she did now. She wasn't boasting or playing God. She was truth made flesh. When the meal was done, she rose and looked toward the darkened ridge. "The valley will test you again before sunrise," she said. "If you survive, maybe it will let you stay. If not, it will take you." He smiled faintly. "I've had worse company." But she didn't smile back. "You don't understand. This place remembers blood. It remembers betrayal. The men who built towns and railroads cut into its heart and thought they could own it. My ancestors fought to keep it alive. I am what remains of that fight." He stood, brushing the dust from his coat. "Then maybe I'm here to remind it that not all men come to take." Her gaze softened again, just for a heartbeat, and then she turned toward the cabin. "You'll sleep inside tonight," she said. "The coyotes are restless." When he entered, the scent of cedar and smoke filled his senses. Everything in the cabin was built to her scale, the bed, the chairs, even the tools hanging on the wall. Yet despite the size, there was warmth. He found a place near the fire pit where furs were laid out, and as he settled down, he noticed a carving above the hearth, a symbol of a hand holding a flame, surrounded by swirling patterns. "What's that mean?" he asked. "It's the mark of my people," she replied from across the room. Fire in the hand, power in the heart. It reminds me that strength without mercy burns everything it touches. He nodded slowly, thinking of the lives he'd burned through in his own time. Towns left behind, faces forgotten, names buried. Maybe that was why he'd come here. Maybe the land hadn't called him for gold or soil. Maybe it had called him to face himself. Outside, thunder rolled across the distant mountains. Ayasha looked toward the window. "It's too soon for rain," she murmured. Then came the tremor, small at first, then stronger. The ground shifted beneath them, and the river's distant roar grew louder. The cowboy jumped to his feet, hand on his revolver, though he knew bullets meant nothing against the earth itself. "What's happening?" Her expression hardened. "The valley is angry." They ran outside. The sky was still clear, but lightning danced along the horizon, crawling across the ridges like veins of fire. From the far slope came a sound that didn't belong to thunder, a deep groaning roar that echoed like the cry of a wounded beast. The cowboy's horse reared, panicked, and broke free into the darkness. Ayasha moved toward the sound without hesitation. "Stay here," she commanded. He followed anyway. Not a chance. They reached the ridge where the earth had split open. A chasm gaped where solid ground had been moments before. From its depths rose a hot wind that stank of sulfur and old bones. She looked down into it with fury and sorrow mingled. "The spirits below are restless," she said. "The ones your kind buried when they dug for silver. They were never put to rest." He stared into the darkness, unsure whether he saw movement or his imagination playing tricks. "You saying there's something alive down there?" Her jaw tightened. "Alive enough to hate." Without warning, a sound erupted, a scream like tearing metal. The ground shook again, and a figure clawed its way upward. The cowboy froze. It wasn't a man, nor an animal, but a twisted shape of bone and shadow, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Ayasha stepped forward, massive and unflinching. "Back to the dark," she commanded in the Apache tongue. "You have no claim here." But the creature lunged. She caught it by the throat, her hand glowing with the same light as the symbol above her hearth. The cowboy drew his gun and fired into the night, each shot echoing like thunder, though he doubted it did much good. The creature howled once, then burst apart into dust and embers. The earth sealed itself as if nothing had ever happened. Silence returned, broken only by the cowboy's ragged breathing. She turned toward him, eyes fierce and glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Now you understand," she said. "This land remembers everything, even what should be forgotten." He nodded slowly, holstering his weapon. "And you, what are you?" She looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "I am its keeper, its punishment, its mercy." And as the wind howled again through the valley, he realized that whatever bond had begun between them was no longer about land or strength. It was about survival, destiny, and the raw, dangerous pull of two souls who were never meant to meet, yet somehow always would.